What's a TV show that you used to love but not many people remember? Will this post receive 100 upvotes? Will the show return to syndication? Will more than 3 people realize what the hell I'm doing right now? Find out the answers to these and more in next week's episode of Soap. When I was a kid, my sister and I would watch a show called Sagwa, the Chinese Siamese cat. I never met anyone else who watched it as a kid until one of my exes mentioned that she watched it when she was younger. I'm kind of curious how many of you watched or remember it. I loved that show too. I remember going to the school library and asking for A Tale of Two Cities. At probably 8 or 9 years old, the librarian kinda huffed and said, "That's a little advanced for you. What ... Did you see it on Wishbone or something?" Still pisses me off when I think about it. I used to love the Weird Science TV show. I don't think I've ever met someone else who watched it besides the one girl whose house I first saw it at. She wasn't even watching it, her dad was, but I was hooked. Also from that time, Duckman. I didn't love that one, but what a weird, unique show. You thrust your pelvis, huh? Edit. Makes me so happy that you guys were watching this weird shit too. If anyone finds out where to stream Weird Science, please post or send me a DM. Freakazoid. I watched it as a kid but then forgot its name until I found a random cosplayer at a local con and I was like, I tease him. Could you please tell me the name of the series? All the people I tried to describe the series character never seemed to understand what was I talking about. Edit. Thanks for 5k plus upvotes. Didn't expect that, lol. I never loved it exactly, but it's way better than it has any right to be, considering it had a young Jessica Alba, Michael Weatherly, Tony Francis, and Jensen Ackles, Dean from Supernatural, and was made by James Cameron, which are some big and reasonably big names. I'm always a little surprised it's not better known. Life. It was a crime drama on NBC back in 2007 starring Damian Lewis as a wrongfully convicted LAPD officer who had recently been released from maximum security prison after 12 years due to incomplete evidence, got a hefty settlement and detective badge upon release. It was my first introduction to Lewis, and his character was so different from any other detective on TV back then. Super zen, unfamiliar with the new world, and just really fucking funny without trying to be. Sarah Shaley was his partner and I had a huge crush on her because of that show. Only lasted 2 seasons and didn't have a proper resolution. I fucking loved it though. Grounded for life. My friend and I used to watch this all the time and we still saw keeping it fresh to each other. Titus used to watch this show religiously. I was pretty upset it got cancelled. Andy Richter controls the universe. I'm not even sure if it lasted a full season, but from what I remember I thought it was pretty funny. 8 Simple Rules for Dating My Teenage Daughter. I loved Three's Company and John Ritter. I thought this show was pretty good. It's sad it ended so soon because of John Ritter's passing. Undeclared. Fucking Fox killing off any good shows it signed up for. It had so many actors in the early stages of their career. Judd Apatow, Seth Rogen, Jay Baruchel, Charlie Hunnam. Even a cameo from Adam Sandler came after Freaks and Geeks was cancelled, and it was the jumping off point for Superbad to get made. Wade was my spirit animal in that he was brave enough to give no fucks about how scared he was, and the episode about the wolf who cried boy was Emmy-worthy, solely for flipping the moral on its head, by teaching the real lesson is sometimes even a liar is telling the truth. That little nugget has stuck with me ever since. Drop Dead Diva. There's a smallish cult following for it out there, but I haven't heard anyone bring it up in years. Looking back on it, I'm not huge on the concept, but it was one of my favorites to watch as a teen. Another huge one is Sense8. I was obsessed with this show and the cast, yet it was cancelled so early on. I'm still pissed at Netflix for that. No one besides me has ever seen it in my friend group, and people look at me like I'm crazy when I bring it up and fangirl about it, lol. There was a TV show in 2006 starring Taye Diggs called Daybreak. It was basically Groundhog Day with a few twists. He was a cop who was framed, and every time he woke up, he would restart his day. Except say, If he was shot and passed out, he would wake up at the start of that day with a gunshot wound, bleeding in his bed next to his wife. He restarted but his body didn't. I loved the show. It was a crazy frame job. The day may have repeated, but it was wildly different each time. He did get shot and woke up one day bleeding in bed. It ran for 13 episodes and never received much of an audience. I remember hearing at the time it was because everyone expected each episode to be too similar. It was so good. Brimstone. From the late 90s, Ezekiel Stone, a cop, is killed in the line of duty and sent to hell. Then several demons escape hell and run amok on Earth. Stone and the devil make a deal and Stone is recruited to recapture the demons and send them back to hell. Short-lived, only one season. I remember it being pretty good. Anyone else remember Cat Scratch, or Cablem, or that Martin mystery show that was actually kind of scary, or 3 Delivery? Edit, oh and Shock Zone, anyone remember that? Edit too. Someone reminded me of Cap and Mikey. That was a great show too. It also looks like no one remembers 3 Delivery. I still laugh thinking about the one where Dick and Mary are supposed to go on a picnic, but get trapped in the library, I think, but he starts putting the moves on her anyway. I'm beginning to think you planned this all along. Actually, my plan was for us to be doing it right now, under a tree by the reservoir. On the ground? Oh, no. I brought newspaper. My favorite scene was when William Shatner appeared as the big giant head. I looked out the window, and I saw something on the wing of the plane. The same thing happened to me. Shatner was in the Twilight Zone episode Nightmare at 20,000 Feet where he saw the gremlin on the wing of the plane. 20 years later John Lithgow played the same role in Twilight Zone, the movie. Mystery Science Theater 3000. I swear no one but me and my friends have heard of this show, even though they made a couple of new seasons on Netflix. The original show ran through the 90s. It's a show where a guy and his robots, puppets, watch bad movies and make fun of them. The movie will play, and they will be there in silhouette cracking wise at the movie. Judging by these answers, it looks like about 90% of you are around my age. 40-ish. Please do yourselves a favor, and if you don't already, do the following. Eat your vegetables, take your vitamins, engage in weight-bearing exercises, and get some cardiovascular exercise. Our 50s are coming sooner than we think, and the better we take care of ourselves now, the better our lives will be in the coming decades. Totally not relevant to TV, but it's honestly what struck me while reading these answers. Also, the show in the 80s the girl whose dad was an alien and she could briefly stop time by putting her index fingers together. I don't remember its name but I loved it. So many of these are relatively popular. I'm currently watching Earth, Final Conflict on Prime. That's one based on the work of Gene Roddenberry that didn't get super popular. Low-budget sets and dated CGI abound, but it's great for sci-fi intrigue. One that I always remember from my childhood, but never see a place to watch is Forever Night. The protagonist is a vampire cop in Toronto. Babylon 5. It makes me sad that it's not as popular as it deserves to be. It looks like a cheap Star Trek rip-off from the 90s at first glance, but it's so much more than that if you give it a chance. Of course, giving a show a chance 90s style is to watch a season of 22 episodes before it truly finds its footing, a lot to ask for modern audience. But if you like sagas, gritty but still mythic storytelling, multi-season arcs that actually fully resolve, give it a shot. Nobody remembers it, but there was a show on Fox in the early 90s called Strange Luck. It was about a guy who survived a plane crash when he was a child, and since then he's had weird things happen to him every day, to the point where it's basically an unpredictable superpower. Like, he goes to get lunch at a diner where they sell lotto tickets, and he always pays for his lunch by using what little money he has to buy a ticket, which always wins just enough. His apartment gets broken into pretty much every day, and he makes a living by selling photos to the local paper because he always seems to be in the right place at the right time. It only lasted a season, but some of the episodes used to be on YouTube. It was kind of cool concept that was running on the heels of X-Files, but it didn't take off. There was an NBC series called Third Watch that my mom and I loved to watch in the late 90s/early 00s. It wasn't a normal cop drama. It combined intertwined and separate storylines between characters in the NIB, FDNY, as well as some doctors in some NYC hospitals. They even made a special 9/11 episode that aired almost a month after the actual event. I've always wanted to go back and rewatch it, because I haven't seen it since I was a kid, but I can never find it on a streaming site. The New Adventures of Winnie the Pooh. Used to watch that mornings with my older brother, hunkered down on our little Tike's dollhouse picnic table, eating Kix cereal, 'cause we were dirt poor. Every time I mention that show I get weird looks like what the heck am I talking about. It's sad because it's one of my favorite memories as a kid. I still remember the theme sung by heart. The Littlest Hobo. I watched this so much as a kid. Canadian show. A German Shepherd dog traveled around helping people and outsmarting bad guys. He would never settle with anyone, just kept wandering and helping people. I can still sing the theme song. Maybe tomorrow I'll want to settle down. Until tomorrow I'll just keep moving on. Doug. Don't hear about it much, but I still sing. Patty, you're the pickle on my coleslaw. Patty, you're the sugar in my tea. Patty, you're the relish on my hot dog. And Patty, you're the mayonnaise for me. Whoa whoa whoa. And also, another great song from Doug via the Beats. I eat my sugared cereal but it makes my teeth bacterial. If you're feeling kind of cruddy, just stick right by your buddy and don't eat too much fried food. We owe a killer tofu. We owe a killer tofu. Time Squad. It was this cartoon in the early 2000s where this gang of a kid, a robot, and a cop go back in time to correct history. One episode I remember is the squad finds out that all of Edgar Allan Poe's works all of a sudden never got created because he was actually a very fun-loving and happy guy, all pink and rainbows. So the squad has to go back to convince him to be a miserable, dark-hearted person so that his writings last in history. Super fun premise and the voice actors are great. Taxi. Welcome back, Catter. These two shows were my ultimate top favorite adult shows between the ages of 4 years old and 10 years old. My favorite kid shows, because obviously I was a kid, were Electric Company and Sesame Street. Best childhood ever. Taxi and Welcome Back, Cater are the two most underrated shows of all time, hands down. There used to be this show on Nickelodeon about a girl from another dimension. She had a dinosaur-looking friend that couldn't breathe in our dimension, so he would stay in her backpack. They would take kids back into their dimension to fight their enemies. I've been looking for the name of this show forever but can't find it. I've asked on our tip of my tongue and never even got a single attempt at an answer. I think about it all the time and wish I could find it just to make the torture end. I feel like Freaks and Geeks is the opposite and one of those shows that's much more relevant and discussed now than it was when it came out. Like at the time it was nothing, but now because of the cast and appeal and because it was genuinely so good, it gets brought up all the time. I only ever heard of it and watched it in the last 10 years, whereas Wonder Years was popular at the time but does seem to be stuck as a nostalgic thing, even though it's great too. Friday the 13th, the TV series. It has nothing to do with the movie series. It's about an oldish man and his two assistants who run an antique shop. They hunt for haunted or cursed artifacts, keeping them safe where they can't hurt anyone. It used to be on somewhat late at night on the weekends and was one of my faves around the age of 12 to 14. I wouldn't be surprised if that Rick and Morty episode where Summer works at Satan's antique shop is inspired by it. 7 Days. I loved this show. Frank Parker going back in time every week. I was the only kid I knew who loved it. Illiter. It's this weird mid-90s CBBC show that gave me nightmares. It's on YouTube. The acting is awful but the two men in black, chasing the kid from their world and pushing into ours still creeps me out. Aquila, another CBBC show about two kids who find an alien spaceship and go on adventures with it. Braceface, kid gets braces and suddenly has special powers caused by her braces. It's just a nice show. Masked Rider, everyone remembers the Power Rangers, some VR Troopers and Beetleborgs, but Masked Rider is forgotten. I loved it. The American footage is cheesy, but the Japanese footage is awesome. Mystic Knights of Terranag, it was awful but I watched it before the Power Rangers on Fox Kids. Ready or Not, an early 90s Canadian teen dramedy. That show taught me about everything, from what I shouldn't smoke, to the birds and the bees, to racism. This show in Degrassi definitely touched base with a lot of heavy and dark topics. Also, the cast would have been my age at the time, so it felt relatable. I have yet to meet someone IRL who remembers Ready or Not. Fun fact, Ryan Gosling was in an episode before launching into stardom. But it's one of those forgotten shows that I love to watch. I wish more people remembered it. I think calling it forgotten is pretty harsh, depending on your criteria, but that might just be the circles I move in. I actually rewatched it for the first time in maybe 15 years in the first half of this year. It has some good stuff, though a lot of clunkers too, like most direct. Its biggest problem is most of the characters are flat or dull, though Robert Picardo's The Doctor is fantastic and easily one of my favorite characters in all Trek. I maintain that Voyager was the answer to everyone that complained 90s Trek was too cerebral and not enough like the original series. Voyager was mostly action-adventure one-off stories, minimizing overarching plot in favor of bizarre think pieces like Tuvix or the Clone Goo, and lots of weird and interesting crewmates bumping heads. It felt campy in a 60s Trek way, and while I definitely prefer Next Gen, I think it was great to have both perspectives on around the same time. Do-Over Before You, Gossip Girl, even the stepfather Penn Badgley starred in a show about an adult, funnily enough an overworked stressed-out paper salesman who gets transported into his younger body back in his high school years. I really liked this show and it was cancelled after one season. Also Everwood was pretty great, both WB shows from back in the day. Fringe, imagine CSI where the group consists of female serious FBI agent, an old mad scientist, and his jack-of-all-trades son who hates dad, and together they investigate freaky cases involving fringe science. Even after saying okay that's it, I'm done for the day. If I make the mistake of watching the pre-title sequence introduction scene where they establish the mystery, I end up hooked for another episode. Once and Again, my parents watched it but I got really into it. Sully Ward, Billy Campbell, a very young Evan Rachel Wood and Shane West. Fillmore, I was older but enjoyed it. Forever Knight, fairly old, was really young and think I saw it in syndication. It was basically pre-Angel and I think it came on around the same time as that show Silk Stockings. Nowhere Man, a UPN show with Bruce Greenwood. I was really young but remember it reminded me of The Fugitive. The main one I can think of that no one I know ever heard of is The Tricklesons. I think it was a spin-off of another show but I was too young when it aired to know what it was. But I was obsessed with Dorothy Jane and wanted to be her. I recently found it on YouTube and it's not great. Lol. Honorable mentions: Make It or Break It, Bobby's World, Pepper Ann, Flintstone Kids, A Pup Named Scooby-Doo, though I think this one is the most popular on this list. Mary-Kate and Ashley's TV shows, Two of a Kind, and So Little Time I Think, and the S Club 7 series. Bearcats, which ran for just one season in 1971. It was about two guys driving around the West, in the early 1900s, in a Stutz Bearcat car, solving mysteries and defeating bad guys. The payment they always demanded from clients was a signed, blank check. My memories of that show feel like a fever dream now, and I doubt anyone else who sees this thread will remember it. But it was campy cool, like an early predecessor of the A-Team. The Hilarious House of Frightenstein. C.H. Hamilton in the early mid-70s produced this wonderful show. Billy Van did many of the different characters, and Vincent Price did all the intros in one shot and was also the narrator of sorts. Very psychedelic children's show indeed. I am told that just south of the border, stoners of all types would stop what they were doing at 4 p.m. and get high and watch this crazy-ass Canadian horror comedy. Up here it was an early morning Saturday time slot. The first episode, of 130, is here. https://b/pow0ug9c4 https://n.wikipedia.org/wiki/the_hilarious_house_of_Frightenstein